I'm here to speak about evaluating and predicting pollination services. So this is a global meta-analysis of pollinator-dependent crops. So pollination is one of the most widely cited and recognized ecosystem services out there. Animal-mediated pollination affects some 87% of flowering plants worldwide. And for many agricultural crops, yield depends on both managed or wild pollinator populations, and they're estimated to affect some 70% of the leading global food crops, accounting for more than 35% of global food production. And in this review by Klein et al., in 2007, they found that of the 107 crop species they investigated, 91 are dependent on natural and or managed pollinators to some degree. If pollination services are substantial, pollinator declines in both wild and managed pollinators may not only increase farmer costs, but also lead to reduced food production. So what I'm presenting to you today is some preliminary work on a meta-analysis looking at evaluating the current scientific evidence concerning the level of service provided by pollinator populations in agroecosystems. And so we addressed two questions. So what is the level of service delivered by pollinator populations in agroecosystems as measured by effect sizes associated with empirical studies of pollination? And to what extent can we predict the level of pollination service delivered from the information about the nature of the pollinator community, the crops under cultivation, or the particulars of the study design in which effect sizes were estimated? And as I mentioned, so this project started in 2011 and it's still unfinished. It was last updated in December of 2017, and there's still some more studies that we'd like to screen and include in our meta-analysis and extract data from. But currently, the data that we have covers a period from 1975 to 2017. In the database so far, we have 86 studies. They compose 374 individual effect size estimates from 31 different countries, covering 43 different crop species. Some of the most frequent crops in there, for example, are coffee, radish, mango, blueberry, but a whole bunch of others. And it also covers a pollinator community of 9 different animal orders and over 57 families. The majority of effect sizes are coming from pollinator treatments or scenarios where there are Hymenoptera, so these are bees and wasps, some Diptera, flies, Coleoptera beetles, and then we have also some more rare pollinator vectors as well, such as hummingbirds, moths, butterflies, thrips, dragonflies. And in the database, the majority of effect sizes are coming from treatments where both honeybees are present and wild pollinators, followed by scenarios where there's just wild pollinators, so no honeybees, and then a small percentage of effect sizes from scenarios or pollinator treatments where only honeybees are present. And so this is the preliminary results so far. So this is a forest plot. So those of you who are not familiar with meta-analysis, we've got a dashed line going through the 0, that vertical line that would indicate a non-existent effect, so no effect present. And you'll see that there's a lot of points on there that's corresponding to the 374 effect sizes, and the majority of them are falling on the positive side, so of the dashed line. So there's evidence for a comparatively large effect of animal pollinators on pollination services and agroecosystems. The overall mean is marked by that diamond at the bottom, and so this is would correspond to a correlation of 0.47. Yeah, a large effect, but you'll also see there's quite a bit of variation among studies. And so in our preliminary analysis too, we've looked at some of this variation, and we found we could explain about approximately a quarter of the variation in pollination services from the models we were building from predictors. And I'll just talk a bit about some of the most informative predictors we found in panels A, B, and C. So in A, you've got experimental design, so scenarios where pollination services were being estimated from experimental designs that had some experimental manipulation component, had on average larger effect sizes. And then in B, when you're when looking at the community attributes, so those studies that estimated the pollinator community from diversity, which is a measure of species richness and evenness, and then followed by richness, were having on average larger associated effect sizes than abundance. And in panel C, those studies that measured pollen endpoints, so things like pollen deposition or pollen efficiency, had on average also larger effect sizes than seed or fruit endpoints. And just lastly, in panel D, a lot of the pollination literature, especially when in terms of crops, talks about the differences in effect between honeybees and other wild pollinators, but in the data that we've analyzed so far, we haven't been able to detect an informative informative effect between honeybees versus wild quite yet. So that's it for my presentation today. If you have any questions, interested in funding or collaborating, please do get in touch.
Great, thank you, Andrew, for your presentation. So we've got some questions coming in. The first one is, with many species relying often at times on one specific pollinator, do you foresee pollination robotics, such as the recent USDA grant to WSU researchers, a reasonable solution to avoid pollinator collapse in food chains, or perhaps replacing natural methods?
It's not my area of expertise, but I could see that being a possibility if we can't reverse certain declines in natural pollinators and in certain areas of honeybees as well. Given that some crop species are dependent on a particular species, I could see that being a potential replacement in scenarios where we can't reverse declines.
Great. Andrew, what's the next priority in your research?
My PhD research is actually on fish management in British Columbia, but I really want to wrap this meta-analysis up. And what I need to do is I've got a bunch more studies I need to screen, and then we need to reanalyze the data and tease apart the predictors, see if there's anything interesting there.
Great. And as a follow-on, are there any specific areas or locations that you think are missing in pollination that would really help the meta-analysis be stronger?
Yeah, there's definitely, in terms of geographical representation, there's definitely some gaps there. A lot of the data comes from Europe and North America and some from South America. So we're missing a lot from other regions of the world, especially Africa and Asia. It's limited in our study, and perhaps due to the fact that the criteria is mostly limited to English language only studies at this point. So that's something that we're going to look at as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Thank you.